Tonight on Spark, arts and social issues. Bay Area artists and designers breathe new life into San Francisco's neglected urban corridor.
What if you walked to work every day and it was fun? I mean, why not, right?
With spellbinding views from the sky, a Bay Area photographer reveals mankind's scars on the land. Hundreds of thousands of people experience Chinese artist Ai Weiwei's groundbreaking installation on Alcatraz. An experimental setting for new music and classical greats. Inside San Francisco Symphony's Soundbox.
Extraordinary to think that something 400 years old could have that powerful an effect on someone who's a 21st century person.
It's all ahead on Spark. Funding for KQED Arts is provided by the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, the California Arts Council, Diane B. Wilsey, Helen Sarah Steyer, the William and Gretchen Kimball Fund, and the members of KQED.
A great street is about people. We should forget that it's a physical space, and first and foremost, it's a social space. My name is Neil Rashoe, and I work for the City of San Francisco's Planning Department. Market Street is the great civic space of San Francisco, of the Bay Area. It has to be beautiful and inspiring. And right now, the design of Market Street just encourages you to move from point A to point B, not really to pause. And I think that's a really big theme for us, is to pause, take in, have some fun.
So in April, we held what we call the Market Street Prototyping Festival.
My name is Deborah Cullinan, and I am the Chief Executive Officer at Yerba Buena Center for the Arts, and I am kind of the lead partner with Neil Rashoe at the Planning Department on this enormous, gorgeous thing.
The Prototyping Festival is basically a big citizen engagement project that's all about asking people what projects can we create as a community that can be part of the longer-term design of the street.
My name is Yael Braja. I'm an artist originally from Rome, Italy. I had an idea that was brewing in my head for a while, and I was able to elaborate, develop it, and put in a proposal for the festival.
We had over 220 prototypes submitted to the festival.
We juried those. We selected 50.
And then I crossed my fingers, and then I was notified that I was accepted. The project is called Tree of Changes. The main inspiration came from the Japanese wish tree. We are working with an amazing team. We are 16 people, and we went through a number of iterative phases, prototyping not only metal, but also electronics and UX design, lighting. And this material works really well. How do all of these elements work together? The programming, the interactivity, the audio. It's a lot of work, but super exciting. Done.
The Prototyping Festival is about the Planning Department stepping back, partnering with other groups who have a whole nother set of skills.
What we call design captains or district captains, and these are experts in the field.
And they're really mentoring all the 50 teams through how to design, fabricate, and implement.
Thank you so much for coming to the Exploratorium. Each one of you has an Exploratorium chaperone, so they're going to help you work on the tools.
These guys we're going to laminate together, right?
We have an amazing breadth of teams, people like you and me who've really never built anything like this before, all the way up to some really, really sophisticated design firms.
If you can imagine for a minute in some of our great maker spaces and laboratories, garages, there are artists and makers collaborating.
Shall we try this?
In making projects that will be on the street.
It's going in for sure.
Is it going faster than before? Just to play? There are a lot of questions and potentially lots of problems that we'll have to work through. We only have a few weeks left. Super nervous.
Preset object. And we have lights.
People will be able to walk up to the tree, speak into a microphone. Their wish is going to be analyzed and is going to visually translate into this light traveling through the tree.
You always risk designs being imposed on a community.
And so we did some public days where we got tons of people just walking in off the street, looking at the projects in whatever form they were in. And then we put them down for 3 days, where hundreds of thousands of people could engage with them and tell us what they like. Do they like benches that can spin around? Do they like chalkboards that they can write down their dreams and wishes on? Do they like to play ping pong with people that they've never met before?
Market Street has some really challenging stretches. At the same time, we also feel that you can't just sort of give up on those spaces, that everyone deserves to have a vibrant public realm where they can come out and enjoy being there.
The artwork itself, to me, it like lightens up the mood of the whole city. They made me feel happy, actually. I feel a relief of like when I was in a whole different like city all of a sudden.
I've been working at this Central Market neighborhood for about 4 to 5 years. So to see this happen quickly within 3 days has been really moving to me.
Nature is very calming, and we really have to find new ways to bring nature back into our urban environments.
Blue sky and the tree canopy.
This is a planter that's also a urinal.
So wait, where does the urine come from?
And so our idea was to blur the lines between a landscape and public infrastructure for sanitation. So are you guys gonna try it?
I'm gonna try it.
Okay, cool. And there's a door if you're modest.
It's roomy.
I think we underestimate joy and what happens to you when you feel playful. What if you walked to work every day and it was fun? I mean, why not, right?
Where's your silliness? Silly, go, go, go!
One of the most important goals of the festival is to create connectivity in the street. We believe that our streets are our great public spaces.
As if we've remembered there's human beings out here and we can interact, meet, exchange, laugh, smile.
You can think of a wish that you'd like. Fantastic. It's been great. It's more than I could have possibly wished for.
I'm David Maisel, and I'm a photographer and visual artist.
Oh, hi. Nice to meet you.
For the past 3 decades, I've been making aerial photographs of sites that have been altered by human intervention. They're sites that have undergone a kind of severe environmental impact, not necessarily for the better.
Where there's sort of circles, the wing is just starting to obscure it.
Working from an airplane does pose very specific challenges because some of the most interesting pictures happen as the pilot exits and enters severe banks.
Kind of positioned it almost like right over it, and this is going to be great. All right.
You don't want to be going too fast, otherwise that makes it difficult for him to get the shots he wants. So you've got to keep it slow, and you've got to keep it banked over, and you've got to keep it going straight. And those aren't things that an airplane wants to do all at once.
I got started making aerial photographs at Mount St. Helens. Seeing the destruction of the volcano, the aftermath, was really fascinating. But what struck me most was the clear cutting of the forests there was, in a way, creating devastation on a scale equal to the natural disaster of the volcano. And I was hooked. I thought it was just an incredible way to look at landscape and to think about these issues. Mining is considered by the Environmental Protection Agency to be the nation's worst industry of all in terms of industrial pollution. I photographed in Montana and Arizona and New Mexico, and I was completely unprepared for the scale of what I was looking at. Nevada and the Carlin Trend is North America's greatest concentrated area of gold mining. To get above this particular site and see this gigantic pool of acid green water, absolutely revolting and also strangely compelling.
The line that David walks very skillfully is this line between sort of education and inspiration. And these pictures are, in their own way, terrifyingly particular in what they show, but we don't, as viewers, always understand what we're looking at. And this gives it a lifespan beyond the immediate, what I would call one-liner, where when you look at the work, you think you understand immediately what's being conveyed, and that's not the case with the David Maisel photograph. You are left with questions.
I guess I'm always a little bit interested in getting to look at things that you're not supposed to see. And as you look at aeronautical charts, especially of the American West, you realize that there are these enormous tracts of land that you're not permitted to fly over. And so that made me really curious. When I was working on a project called Terminal Mirage, which happens all around the Great Salt Lake in Utah, there's one area that was a military zone where there are about 900 structures spread across the valley floor. They look like a little suburban housing development in the desert, but in fact, they house expired chemical weapons. The Tooele incineration plant was actually incinerating these expired chemical weapons. The ash would go up into the air and eventually settle on the lake, which is mined for its mineral content. So there's this sense that one hand doesn't necessarily know what the other is doing. And I find it, in a way, a reflection of just who we are as a society.
It feels totally different than the last time I was here.
Once I've started a project, in a way, it never ends. So I've been looking at Owens Lake since 2001 and just recently returned. What fascinates me at Owens Lake is its scale. It's enormous. It's like 150 square miles. It's probably the largest site that I have ever worked at.
100 years ago, Owens Lake was one of the largest natural lakes in California. In the early 1900s, the city of Los Angeles realized they didn't have the water to support that city, so they looked far and wide and identified the Owens Valley as a source of water for the city of Los Angeles. Diversion started in 1913, and by about 10 years later, Owens Lake was essentially dried. So that exposed those salts and soils to the high winds that we have here. The dried Owens Lake bed became the largest single source of particulate air pollution in the country.
The dust storms on the lake used to be, and probably still could be, really massive. I mean, when the wind is right, coming off the mountains just right, the lake at times could look like a nuclear bomb went off on it.
About 3,000 people are greatly affected by the dust from Owens Lake. Between 2000 and 2015, the city of Los Angeles has spent about $1.5 billion on the lake bed dust control project. It's a mix of gravel, flooding, and vegetation, kind of a mosaic of these three. David Maisel was one of the first people from the outside, sort of, that took an interest in this project.
Kind of bank it right here.
And he realized that this was really a geography-changing thing that was going to happen. You know, it changed the way our planet looks from outer space.
Every frame that I shoot by necessity is different. What you see through the camera is constantly shifting.
Yeah, so if you can kind of bring me back closer toward the brine pool.
The minerals that would have been dispersed throughout the whole lake are basically concentrated in these little zones of water. And that yields these blooms of salt-loving bacteria that stain the water this incredible deep red.
One of the things that's very interesting about David's work is its archaeological characteristic. The trace that we as people leave during our lifespan.
Look at this glow.
He's not an activist photographer, but he is a photographer who's motivated to try to show us something in a manner that we haven't seen it ever before.
Yeah, this is beautiful. I'm not wanting to make these pictures to be didactic, to tell us what we're doing wrong. It's not the place of art to solve these problems. It may be the place of art to bring them to our attention. I just want to ask the questions.
Most of these passengers are going to tour the legendary former prison, Alcatraz. Within its crumbling walls, they may stumble upon 7 new works by superstar artist and Chinese dissident Ai Weiwei. We came to see the process of installing one of the exhibits.
And this exhibit with the kites will take up an entire space?
Entire space, yes. There are more than 100 kites that comprise the body of the dragon.
Exhibit curator Cheryl Haynes dreamed up the idea of bringing Ai's art to Alcatraz 3 years ago. The artist had just been released from an 81-day detention by Chinese authorities for alleged tax evasion. Ai's supporters say it was more about suppressing his relentless criticism of China's government.
I mean, really one of the baseline concepts of this exhibition is what is freedom. And as you walk through the various works, you will get a sense that this is a very central theme, very important idea that he is addressing here.
Ai has been unable to leave China since 2011 after authorities confiscated his passport. Finding freedom within constraints is a worthy challenge, Ai said from his Beijing studio. Still, his inability to leave the country is hard.
For an artist to be unable to see the venue and to be unable to interact with the audience, if I had to imagine the toughest restriction on an exhibition, that would be it.
Ai Weiwei conveys his situation in this giant dragon kite.
It will be suspended above the viewer, but it's also restricted within the building. So there's this really interesting conversation between control and freedom.
The challenges of bringing the works to Alcatraz only add to the intrigue. The entire island is a historical site without a power grid or a fresh water source.
We basically cannot touch the walls. We cannot touch anything. We cannot add anything. It's a hanging installation. Like the prisoners themselves, it is only there for a period of time.
This piece was shipped by barge, then pushed up a 13-story hill. The 5-ton sculpture transforms solar collectors from Tibet into a massive bird's wing. Some of Alcatraz's best-known prisoners include Chicago gangster Al Capone, or the Anglin brothers, who plotted a daring escape. Less known are the political prisoners held on the island during the time Alcatraz was a military prison. Nikki Phelps oversees visitor programs at Alcatraz.
During the military prison era, around 1895, there was a group of Hopi Indian elders that were brought to Alcatraz because they had refused to send their children to school under the Army's direction. They wanted to raise their children in the Hopi tradition.
Ai references that history in this sound installation. A Hopi chant echoes against the walls of a former psychiatric observation cell. Here, a row of decaying cells is the setting for the poetry and music of people imprisoned around the world for expressing their beliefs. The late musician Fela Kuti, who decried police repression in Nigeria, and feminist rockers Pussy Riot, who criticized Russian President Vladimir Putin. In a piece titled Trace, the faces of more than 175 dissidents are fashioned in Legos. Many are largely unknown. Ai wants to make them familiar. The exhibit includes biographies of these men and women being held in the Middle East, Africa, Asia. And there's Edward Snowden, wanted for leaking classified U.S. government documents. Some consider him a patriot, others a traitor. Here, visitors are being asked to write pre-addressed postcards to exiles and people Ai deems prisoners of conscience.
This one woman's portrait just really stood out to me. Her eyes just really grabbed me. I thought about how uncolorful Alcatraz is and how just drab it seems, and I thought, well, if prison is like that, then she needs some color.
San Francisco Museum of Modern Art's Chad Curver says Ai walks a fine line.
There's a huge debate in the art world right now about exactly who Ai Weiwei is, in the sense that there's the folks in the art world are deeply concerned that he's too much of an activist and not enough of an artist. The folks in the activist world think that he's too much of an artist and not an activist.
There's no doubt that Ai benefits by being both. His activism has given him a stardom that few other artists enjoy. His artwork is in high demand, and a staff of dozens implement his ideas.
Art done well has the ability to snake its way into us through beauty or through the way we view it.
Riyadh, your portrait and story moved me. I hope that you are well in receiving many postcards, so I hope she likes it.
Soundbox is designed to appeal to people, many of them younger people, who never have attended many classical concerts before.
Welcome to Soundbox.
Or perhaps have attended them and weren't quite sure about how they should react to the experience. Since the 1970s, I've been really interested in how the installation of music can change the audience's perception of it. How could this be achieved with lighting, with different configurations of seating, with projection? Soundbox was an opportunity to take a space which was a space no one wanted to be in, a very dead rehearsal hall, and make it into a place everyone wanted to be.
My name is Nicole Cash, and I am the Associate Principal Horn for the San Francisco Symphony. Playing in Soundbox is a completely different experience. Musically, we do get to do different things. The piece that I played was kind of a very angular, loud, rambunctious piece. It's a more relaxed atmosphere, and I think that is the first thing that kind of turns younger, maybe less exposed people off to the whole symphony experience. They think they're going to come in here and they have to be quiet, and it's stuffy, and everyone's, wearing a tuxedo or a ball gown, and, you can't talk, and you can't move, and you don't know when to clap.
Orchestras have to justify their position in the artistic ecosphere. It's important for every sort of cultural entity to change with the times. It is important for them to kind of make their presence felt among younger audiences, if only because that's who's going to be around soon.
I can't tell you what it meant for me to have some people, young people, coming up at the end of the Monteverdi Magnificat and saying, I never heard of the Monteverdi Magnificat. I never heard of Monteverdi, and this has now become my most favorite piece. extraordinary to think that something 400 years old could have that powerful an effect on someone who's a 21st century person. We're just learning ways in which the system and the room itself can create new possibilities for old music, as well as being the inspiration for the commissioning of new music.
My big interest is how can we make the instruments that we have, the symphony orchestra, the string quartet, make sounds that are new or sounds that might mimic an arcade game. In this case, each of the movements has a name of a little machine. They're called chaser, plucker, opener, grinder, and mixer. But I think that the audience for a place like this, what they're interested in is seeing something, experiencing something new and exciting. And if something goes wrong, then, they'll be glad to have been in the lab when it exploded.
It is very challenging music. I usually tend to, when I go out, go to more kind of either rock-oriented shows or hip-hop shows or kind of more modern shows. But I found that it blew my mind. It's been an incredible experience. The experience of seeing it makes me only want to see more and experience more.
For more on tonight's stories, visit KQED Arts online at kqed.org/arts. Funding for KQED Arts is provided by the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, the California Arts Council, Diane B. Wilsey, Helen Sarah Steyer, the William and Gretchen Kimball Fund, and the members of KQED.